Hi guys, it's me, HD, and welcome to the qualifying watch-along for the first ever Miami Grand Prix here in 2022. And I cannot wait to see what goes down at this track. It's been an interesting weekend so far. This track's proven to be not that grippy, quite tough in certain areas. We've seen some spins, some accidents, we've seen some red flags, of course. And yeah, this is going to be a topsy-turvy session. We're definitely going to get, with how hard, of course, drivers, tend to push in qualifying normally. I think we're definitely going to get some moments with drivers probably causing red flags, certainly in that middle sector from turn 12 all the way to turn 16, which is proving to be very, very tricky. But yeah, I think we're in for a very exciting session. Going to be close battles all through the field, and it's going to be pretty hard, I think, to predict for anyone who wishes to predict what's going to happen in this qualifying session. Hopefully you guys, by the way, are doing well. Hopefully you're as excited as I am. And hopefully, with me, you'll be watching the session, watching along the session with me here. Or if you cannot watch the session, but you can only listen to the stream or only watch the stream because you're unable to watch it for whatever reason, then don't worry, I will take you through every step of the qualifying session beginning in about 28 minutes time. And yeah, I'll keep you bang up to date with everything that goes on in qualifying. Obviously I'll display my running order on screen, and also no matter what part of the world you're from, no matter what time it is, hopefully you're having for everyone watching, hopefully you're having the best day possible you could be having. So let's get into, firstly, before we get into anything else, let's get into the results of practice 3. Practice 3 finished about an hour and a half ago, so let's quickly get into those results. So Sergio Perez finished up in P1 with Charles Leclerc in second. Max Verstappen finished in third. And then you had Fernando Alonso fourth, Sebastian Vettel fifth, and then Mick Schumacher sixth, Carlos Sainz in P7, and then Magnussen Albon, surprisingly, in P9, and Norris in 10th. That rounds out the top 10. And then the rest of the order is Tsunoda, Lance Stroll. Stroll, I have to say, used a lot of tyres. So did Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz in practice 3. Stroll 12th, Ricciardo 13th, and then Bottas 14th, Hamilton 15th, and then Gasly 16th, Russell 17th, Zhou Guanyu 18th, Latifi 19th, and Ocon 20th. Of course, the reason Ocon is in 20th and did not do a lap time is because he crashed exactly where Carlos Sainz did yesterday at turn 13/14. Pretty much an identical accident to what Carlos had yesterday in practice 2. Now, with this finishing order, I do have to just quickly give some disclaimers because, I mean, you've got, the two Mercedes really low down, McLaren's kind of low down as well. Now, with Hamilton, Russell, Gasly, Bottas, those four were quite prominent in practice 3 up until really the final 15-20 minutes or so, when once others such as Alonso, Vettel, Schumacher, Sainz, Leclerc, Perez started to set quicker lap times, Albon as well, and Magnussen. Those drivers, Russell, Hamilton, and Bottas, did not do a final, low fuel run on soft tyres like those did. So we don't know quite what their pace would have been in the end of practice 3. I'm guessing with Mercedes, I'm pretty sure their best time was done on the soft compound tyre for both Hamilton and Russell. So I'm guessing they probably would have been able to go at least half a second quicker, maybe 3/4 of a second quicker. So yeah, it would have put them a lot higher up. But from Mercedes' point of view, they don't look as good as I thought they would coming out of this session, coming into qualifying. It doesn't look as good as it really as I really thought it would, because obviously practice 2 was fantastic for them. Then again, Ferrari and Red Bull probably sandbagging a bit. Then again, saying that, in practice 3, I think you could make the argument that they're still holding back because Perez, I mean, that was the lap time he did there to finish in P1, 1:30.3. That's pretty much the lap time he did in practice 2. So I think Perez definitely could go quicker, but I think he's probably closer to his limit than, say, a Verstappen or Leclerc is. Leclerc did a time about almost half a second quicker in practice 2 than he did there, which was a 1:30.4. And then obviously you got George Russell, who did a 1:29.9 in practice 2 yesterday. And today, so far, in practice 3, did a 1:31.9. So it's very hard to say whether or, who is where coming out of practice 3, which is why really any predictions of mine has to be really based off of practice 2 more so. Because again, practice 3, I'm not sure if the track condition was not in great condition or everyone was running heavier fuel to kind of simulate more so what the car's going to feel like on heavier fuel, of course, for the Grand Prix. I don't know if that was the case for most of the teams, but yeah, a lot slower lap times for everyone. Also, it was probably quite hot. I think it was 50 degrees Celsius track temperature during practice 3, and it will be quite a bit cooler for qualifying. For qualifying, it's probably going to be a 5 degrees Celsius cooler, maybe 7 or 8 at most. So that will probably help the lap times. But yeah, it's pretty hard to say with a lot of these times. It's pretty hard to say whether they're that representative or not. So yeah, we'll have to really go off of, I think, practice 2 and those results instead. Now I'll go to these pictures. These, of course, will be the pictures guiding you through the qualifying session that is coming up in just over 20 minutes time. So I think we should, we'll kind of talk about, what happened in practice 3 because there were some things of note, of course. We'll go through the order and, I'll try and give as best I can my predictions for this qualifying session. So I think Red Bull, of course, starting at the front of the grid, I think Red Bull did prove in practice 3 that they do have the best car for qualifying. As long as the drivers nail a lap together, I think they've got the car for pole position. Obviously, Perez finishing in P1 with Leclerc second. Verstappen, at the very end of practice 3, was on a lap. Then he made a mistake at turn 14 and was very lucky not to hit the barriers. He did very well to get on that brake pedal as soon as he did. So, yeah. With Verstappen, it's hard to say exactly when or where compared to Leclerc he is on pace. But I'd imagine Max Verstappen would have gone P1 if he continued that lap without making that mistake. Not by much, probably only a tenth of a second, but that still would have kept him, 0.3 of a second ahead of Leclerc. And that, to me, is what the gap looks to be between Red Bull and Ferrari. Red Bull look to be about 2 to 3 tenths of a second quicker than the Ferrari car. I think the Ferrari car, it's doing fine. It's not doing poorly. It just doesn't have, I think, the straight line speed that the Red Bull does have in the, say, first half of the middle sector. And then, of course, the final sector is pretty much, except for one corner, just flat out. So I think that is really benefiting Red Bull a lot. And we were seeing it in practice 3. Sergio Perez, got to say, by the way, very, very quick in the Red Bull. Be very interested to see what he can do in this session. By the way, make sure, guys, in the chat below or to the side, make sure to post your predictions for qualifying with 20 minutes to go until qualifying begins. And post your top 5 predictions for qualifying, and I'll make sure to read out your predictions before we get going for qualifying, like I said, in 20 minutes time. But yeah, I think Verstappen will be on pole, and I would be surprised if Leclerc could really seriously challenge him for pole position. The only thing stopping Max is a mistake or, a reliability gremlin coming back for him. If he nails the lap when it matters, he's getting pole. I don't really see anyone being able to fight with him. Maybe Sergio Perez pulls out an amazing lap and gets it. That would be incredible, but I don't think that's going to happen. And honestly, looking at practice 3, I would say Sergio Perez is looking very likely for second place. Because he is, pace-wise, he's not that far off Max Verstappen. He's probably at most only a tenth and a half off of Max around this track. Perez's pace really has improved in this 2022 F1 season. So yeah, I honestly think Red Bull could get a 1-2. If they were to get a 1-2 for the grid tomorrow, given the run down to turn 1, it'd be pretty hard for Red Bull to lose the lead to Ferrari or anyone else going down to turn 1, because it is turn 1 is not the easiest place to overtake, and Red Bull, as long as they get a great start tomorrow, if they were to start from the front row, as long as they got a decent start, they'd be able to pretty much block off anyone trying to, pull a move on them. So yeah, I think Red Bull definitely the team to beat, and I'd be very surprised if we have anyone else on pole position. They just, to me, look the best around this track, and definitely the track layout helping them. And then yeah, for Ferrari, I think they'll be probably 2 to 3 tenths of a second off pole position in the end. Just don't think they have the car for this track. I think they have a better chance, honestly, of winning the race than they do of getting pole position. Sorry. God, I had a large intake of breath then because my throat felt like it was closing in. Yeah, let me just clear my throat again. There you go. It feels better now. Yeah, I think Ferrari have a better chance, honestly, of winning the race, which obviously is what matters most, rather than getting pole position. The reason is because I think in the race, obviously, fuel on board, I think the Ferrari is a better car than we've seen with Red Bull in races so far this season. Obviously, in the races, a lot of the corners are a lot slower, which will suit Ferrari better than it will in qualifying. And also, their tyre wear is pretty good. They're able to look after their tyres certainly better than Red Bull. We saw that in Melbourne, where Red Bull were really graining their front tyres up quite a bit. And around this track, there will be quite a bit of front tyre graining, especially coming out of that first sector. So, as long as Leclerc can put himself... I mean, the aim, I think, for Leclerc, realistically, he needs to aim for, say, second place, because I think he knows it's going to be very tough to get on pole. Ferrari just don't look as strong this weekend as, say, they did in Melbourne, in Bahrain. They just don't look to have that type of pace for this Grand Prix. So, yeah, I think if Leclerc was to get second, which I think is realistically the best he can get, if everybody, gets or does the best they can with the car they have, and then, like I said, I think Leclerc, his aim should be second, and then, he can absolutely still win the race, because, of course, if he gets a better start than Verstappen, if Verstappen is on pole, then he can absolutely go on to win the race. And like I said, I think the Ferrari will definitely be closer to the Red Bull on race pace, especially if it is hot, because, of course, looking after tyres is much more important in hotter conditions than it is in cooler conditions, like we saw at Imola. So, yeah, it's not all lost for Ferrari, but they just need to maximise what they have, and then we'll see where they end up, and then take it from there. Because I think, like I said, I think for the race, they've got a good race car. They just need to make sure they get a good enough grid position to really utilise that race car. If Red Bull get a front row lockout, for example, then even if Leclerc does have a good race car, like I expect, he probably won't be able to utilise it to its full extent. So, yeah, if he can get on the front row, that would be a good result. And for Carlos Sainz, it's pretty clear that that boy has lost confidence, because he was pretty quick yesterday, then had his accident, yet another accident for Carlos, and then in practice 3 earlier, he just didn't have any pace compared to his teammate. Lost It looks like overnight he's lost about 3 or 4 tenths, and that's not because of anything the team have done. That's simply confidence. He is very unconfident right now in his ability to push the car to its limit without, crashing. I don't know if there's some sort of setup issue with the Ferrari, that it's not set up in a way that means he can push and not, crash. I don't know if it's a situation like that, or if it is just, Carlos is just not handling the car well and not performing well enough for the car. We'll have to see, maybe later in the season, whether this continues, and then look deeper into it. But I would be surprised if Carlos Sainz, given what we saw from practice 3 and given his form, I would be surprised if Carlos Sainz finished in the top 3. I think realistically, he's going to probably finish in 4th place. I think the first aim has got to be for him, just don't crash. I mean, if he has another accident and ends up having to start the race from even lower on the grid than that, then he is just, continuously shattering his confidence. So, yeah, hopefully he has some sort of session that can build some sort of confidence for him going forward. But in terms of the fight up front, yeah, I think Red Bull have got the advantage, and I think as long as they execute what they've got, they'll be absolutely fine. For this team, though, Mercedes, from practice 3, again, it's very hard to say where they actually are, because Russell was 2 seconds quicker in practice 2 than he was in practice 3. So I can't really sit here and say this is where I think they are, because, again, I don't know, given the drop-off in lap times that we saw from, from yesterday. So we'll have to see what they do when they start to push it. The car, I will say, did not look as good today as it looked in practice 2 yesterday. It didn't look as comfortable, so maybe the car has not evolved well overnight, with the ever-changing track conditions. But I still think they'll be 5th and 6th, both Mercedes. It looks like it's probably going to be Russell in 5th place, because he has been consistently quicker than Hamilton this weekend. I think Hamilton ended up quicker in the end, but I think Russell may have had some sort of issue. I can't remember what it was. But yeah, I think Russell is most likely going to be the quickest Mercedes driver, because he seems to be the most confident in this Mercedes car out of the 2 drivers. But yeah, 5th and 6th for the 2 Mercedes cars. And if they do get that, then that's fine. But what I'm curious to see is how far off pole position will they be. If it's still a second, then no progress has been made. The progress that I have claimed has been made, based on what I saw yesterday and other people have said. If, like I said, if they still end up a second a lap off the pace, then I'm going to have to retract my previous statement of that Mercedes look a step forward, looks like they've taken a step forward, and look as though they are 2 or 3 tenths closer, which is what if they can kind of replicate how their car was handling in practice 2, I think they can get a bit closer here in qualifying. But we're just going to have to see. That's the great thing about qualifying. You never know what could happen in qualifying. We could see a completely different story to what we've seen in practice. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, as long as they finish 5th and 5th and 6th and close the gap to the front 2 in terms of pace, then I think that's pretty much an acceptable session. As long as they keep closing the gap to the front 2 teams, then that's all you can ask for. That's literally all you can ask for. You can't ask for them overnight to just close up half a second or a second per lap. It's not going to happen like that. If Mercedes close the gap to the point where they can fight with Ferrari and Red Bull, it's not going to be an overnight thing. It's going to be a gradual process. These cars are not the type of cars where you can just bolt on an upgrade or 2 and, sort whatever problem you've got. It takes a lot longer to sort out problems with the downforce in regards to the floor than, downforce problems from last year, for example, where you could just bolt on a couple upgrades and your issues are pretty much fixed. So, yeah, Mercedes, it's going to be a long road for them still to get back towards or somewhere near the front of the field. So hopefully they have some sort of positive session today. And then, for the midfield, from practice 3, you had what? Alpine up there with Alonso. Vettel, who's on screen now, thankfully, as soon as I mention him. Sebastian Vettel 5th. I'm not sure what to make of that. I'm going to have to wait to see what he actually does in the session to see whether that is genuine. I will say Aston Martin haven't looked too bad so far this weekend. They've not looked good, but they've not looked as bad maybe as I expected them to be around a track like this. So not looking too bad for the Aston Martin team. We'll have to see whether Vettel can replicate that in this session. If Vettel can get in the top 10 with this car, that would be a phenomenal result. It really, really would. And then you got Haas F1, who had both cars in the top 10. Mick Schumacher was ahead of Kevin Magnussen. Mick has to do that if he can in this qualifying session coming up, because he needs to start proving that he is good enough to be in Formula 1. Because if he continues to be hammered by Magnussen, then there has to be, even a debate as to whether Mick Schumacher should be on the grid. Because, is Mick the worst driver on the grid? No. Should he be in Formula 1? Probably yes. But there are drivers who are not in Formula 1 right now who should be probably in Formula 1 ahead of him, given his current performance so far, such as Oscar Piastri, for example. And, Mick, at the end of the day, he needs to prove himself as first, I think, a worthy and consistent, to a certain extent, consistent midfield contender. He needs to at least prove that he can be that, because we haven't seen any evidence that Mick can be that. Bahrain, he was close to a point, but ultimately failed. Saudi, of course, he didn't do the race because he crashed in qualifying, which was his own fault. Melbourne, the car was terrible. Hard to really criticise him for that. And then Imola, I thought in Imola he did well that weekend up until what he did in the race, which was just amateur hour. So we'll see what Mick can do. I'm really hoping he can put in a top 10 qualifying result. I'm really hoping he can do that, because he needs it big time. Because, obviously, let's not pretend like his last name doesn't help him get to certain places in motorsport and obviously into Formula 1. But he needs to start proving that he does actually have the talent and he does actually have the quality to be a success in Formula 1, because we haven't seen anything to suggest that at the moment. You got Alpine up there who are good. Haas looking, I think Haas will probably be up there as well. Alfa Romeo also. Bottas was pretty good in the first 3 quarters or so of practice 3 until the others improved, and Bottas did not do a final round of soft tyres. So it'll be interesting to see what Bottas can do in qualifying. And watch out for Alfa Romeo, because I think Zhou was in the top 10 as well, was the young Chinese driver. So look out for them too. And then McLaren, I think Norris will be in the top 10. I just don't think it'll be that great. Ricciardo definitely won't be in the top 10 because he's the slower of the 2 McLarens, and McLaren don't look to be that great to get both cars into the top 10. And then who do you have after that? AlphaTauri. Pierre Gasly's looking, I think Gasly's doing the best he can with what he's got, but what he's got is not that great. Certainly it's not as good as what he had last season. Last season we saw so many times him putting in top 6 results in qualifying, but I just don't think he quite has a good enough car to replicate that this season. So we'll see what he can do. He'll probably be hovering around the P10, P11 mark. And then who do you have after that? I've already kind of talked to Aston Martin. I'm not sure whether they can replicate that type of pace from practice 3. But we'll see. If they do, it would be great. And then Williams. It's weird with Williams because you got Latifi who's always at the back, but Alex Albon, I mean, in practice 2, he was down in 17th place, but then was it practice 1? He was up in like 7th or 8th, and then practice 2 he's in 9th. It's very hard to really know what Albon can do this weekend with that car. I think he can get out Q1, but I'm not sure whether he can do any more than that. I think realistically, we're looking at Albon finishing up in 14th or 15th place at best. But if he can do any better than that and replicate what he did in practice 2, then I'm all for it. I absolutely am all for it. But, those are all the teams. And qualifying, as you can see on the screen, begins in less than 4 minutes' time as the F1 intro is beginning to play on the F1 broadcast. I just want to say quickly before I start reading out maybe some predictions in the chat, if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this regarding the Miami Grand Prix, because I will be live 3 times tomorrow. Firstly at 5:30 p.m. UK time for the race preview, then live again at 8 p.m. UK time for the race watch-along, of course the main event of the weekend, and then as soon as possible after the race is finished, I will be live for the race reaction to the Miami Grand Prix. So don't forget to come along to all of that tomorrow. And again, if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there. And as well, smash the like button, share this video and channel to obviously help the channel grow. And follow me on Twitter at ChazHD5. By the way, great to see quite a few of you here. Great to see you all, as always. Music Monster Man asks, could we foresee Valtteri Bottas finish P5? I mean, given his pace in practice 3, if he went out and done a final run, I would have been very curious to see what he could have done, because I think he probably could have been 4th. And obviously, it's hard to know whether, would he have finished there if Mercedes also had done a final a final lap on soft tyres. It's hard to know. Mike Brown says Schumacher's had a slow shit car. I mean, last year, true, he couldn't have done anything about that. But this year, he has a good car now, or a good midfield contender. Magnussen has proven that. Magnussen's had 3 points finishes this season in the Sunday races, and then of course he got a sprint race point in Imola. So he's got the car now. There's no excuses. Will Sainz's car be fixed in time? They are still working on it. It says models in scale. I've not heard about this, so let me quickly look. We've got about 90 seconds to go until start of the session, so I'll get all those graphics ready. Right, so Esteban Ocon will not be in qualifying because of a cracked chassis, and Ricciardo has been given a reprimand for a practice start in practice 3, but nothing about Carlos Sainz. A lot of work being done on Sainz's car. Well, I've not seen anything on Twitter to suggest that you might miss the session. We'll have to see what happens. But anyway, let me get rid of all of this and get all this up. Obviously, this running order you're seeing on the left-hand side, that is from practice 3. And Q1, of course, is an 18-minute long session, and we'll be knocking out the 5 slowest from Q1. So at the end of the 18 minutes, whoever's in the drop zone, which I will show on screen what the drop zone is. Actually, I'll do it now. Get that dotted line out. Hold on. Do it. I can clearly show you guys where that cutoff zone is. And it is about there. And there you go. So yeah, anyone below that dotted line at the end of the 18 minutes will be out of qualifying. And will start in whatever the bottom 5 positions, whatever, order it is. But I will let you know when qualifying does begin. It should begin momentarily in a few seconds' time. Nice big crowd in for this Grand Prix. Lots of orange shirts, not just Verstappen shirts or Verstappen fans, but also McLaren. And obviously got plenty of red around the track for the famous Ferrari team. I'm sure you've got some silver caps out there as well for Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton. And yeah, only one car for Alpine in this session, and that's Fernando Alonso. Even though they're missing Ocon, though, that doesn't mean they can't have a good session, because... And have I got the timer synced up absolutely correctly? No, not quite. I'll do it in about 50 seconds' time. As the session, by the way, is underway. So the first ever qualifying session in Miami has begun. But even though, yeah, Ocon is out of the session and won't compete, that doesn't mean Alpine can't get a good result, because they do have, with Alonso, pretty good package, and I think Alonso absolutely will be in the top 10 as long as he doesn't have any bad luck, which has been the bane of his existence this season. As a load of the cars now just touring through the first sector and beginning the middle sector on their outlaps. And I'll get the timer up in 3, 2, 1. And there you go. 17 minutes to go until the end of Q1. As we've got all of the cars on track except for the 2 Red Bulls, Alonso, the 2 Mercedes, Russell. The 2 Mercedes, Russell is one of them. How many cars have we got on track now, actually? We've got about 13 cars on track. Everyone on soft tyres, of course. That's the Haas there of... Is it Kevin Magnussen, I think it is? And, God, his car sliding around a lot on the exit of turn 17 as he begins his first lap of qualifying. Of course, Magnussen, an absolute speed demon in qualifying. We'll see what he can do. He comes through the long, fast first sector, which is very similar to the first sector at the Circuit of Americas in Austin, Texas. Long, sweeping, fast corners. And it does take quite a bit out of the tyres. As, well, the sun isn't quite out. It's gone away, so it's a lot cooler, the track, than it was earlier. And it looks as though we may... Because in this part of the world, you do get regular, random rain showers, and it looks as though that isn't possibly too far away. As Magnussen is just coming through the turn 14-15 chicane. This has been a great lap so far for Magnussen. On the limit and getting the most out of that Haas F1 car. Not quite as close to the wall of turn 16 as he could have got. As Magnussen, DRS wide open all the way down to turn 17. And certainly in these temperatures, now that Mercedes are on track, they're going to have to do probably an extra couple warm-up laps with the drop in temperature that we have had. As Magnussen rounds the final corner, Magnussen goes into P1. So Kevin Magnussen is P1 for Haas. Here is now Mick Schumacher. Mick Schumacher goes second. Mick's time, though, quite a bit slower, I believe. Alex Albon goes quicker than Kevin Magnussen. Here comes Sebastian Vettel, who goes even quicker than Albon. And Vettel goes up to first position. Now Tsunoda goes up to first. Tsunoda up to P1. Now you've got Lance Stroll up to P1. I think some drivers are taking a bit of time to warm their tyres up. So we're not going to see stunningly quick times straight away. So Latifi is up in 5th place. And now we've got Carlos Sainz up in P1. It's Max Verstappen on his first flying lap. And pretty much on the ragged edge through Sector 1. And yeah, Carlos up in P1 and Max Verstappen half a tenth down on Carlos Sainz's first sector, which is surprising. Normally the Red Bull is pretty quick in that first sector. And then you got Ricciardo now up to second. Do bear with me, by the way, in updating the order, because it is moving around, obviously, all of the time. And it is pretty difficult to keep it updated to the absolute second. So like I said, bear with me. As Max Verstappen continues on his lap, and he's half a second up on Carlos Sainz in the middle sector. The straight line speed that Red Bull has is phenomenal to be pulling out half a second over the Ferrari just in Sector 2 alone. And into turn 17, he gets that corner right. And he will now surely go P1 with this time. He rounds the final corner. And he does by 0.6 of a second. Max Verstappen goes quickest on a 1:30.2. That's his quickest time of the weekend so far. Perez half a second slower than Verstappen and goes second. So it's a Red Bull 1-2. There you go. 1-2 for Red Bull. Sainz third, Ricciardo fourth, Leclerc fifth, and Norris sixth. And then Stroll, Tsunoda, Vettel. And you got now Russell up in third place ahead of the two Ferrari cars. Look at that. That's a good turn of pace to start the session. Of course, this is only just to get into the next part of qualifying, but you'd imagine that'd build a bit of confidence for the team. And let me just update some of the order. Lewis Hamilton just did a warm-up lap, and he's now on a proper quick time, as Kevin Magnussen does a proper quick time and improves to 8th place. And let's see what Hamilton can do for Sector 1. Bit of a hesitation there going through. Oh, and loses the rear end massively on the exit of Turn 8. But he also missed the apex of Turn 8 because his car was wandering through Turn 7. So that car on the very edge of losing grip. As Mick Schumacher is up to 7th. And then you got Tsunoda up to 9th as Lewis Hamilton gets through that turn 14-15 chicane that he described as a B&Q car park. If you're British, you'll know exactly what a B&Q car park looks like. As he's done a decent middle sector, but he's quite a bit down on his teammate for the lap so far. But that first sector did not help. As Lewis Hamilton rounds that final turn 17 onto now the left-right. But it's flat out, and Hamilton only goes 10th. As we've got 10 minutes to go in Q1. Let me update a load of the order quickly. So you've got Fernando Alonso, who's just gone up to 6th. Oh, well, was 7th. But then Zhou Guanyu goes up to 5th in the Alfa Romeo. Alfa Romeo have had a very good start to the season, of course. They're up in 5th in the Constructors' Championship. And Bottas, of course, has been the main man for them. And he's still to set a lap. And yeah, Hamilton, car wandering through the exit of turn 7 into the entry of turn 8, missed the apex by an absolute mile, and then had an oversteer moment on the exit of turn 8. So Hamilton probably has another 7-8 tenths of a second to show. So don't panic yet, Hamilton fans. There's Gasly there, replay of him going deep at the chicane of 14 and 15 and just cutting across. But yeah, it is Verstappen, Perez, Russell, Sainz, Zhou, Ricciardo, Leclerc, and then Alonso, Schumacher, Norris. That's your top 10. And then Tsunoda is P11. Carlos Sainz, by the way, is on another timed lap. Then you got Hamilton 12th, Magnussen 13th, Stroll is 14th with Pierre Gasly in 15th. And then in the drop zone for the moment, you've got Latifi ahead of Albon. So, well, that means surely that Albon we can improve on that, because we know that Albon is much quicker than Nicholas Latifi as Latifi comes into the pits. Two Williamses are both in the pits now, as Charles Leclerc has done a purple first sector, as Zhou Guanyu, who is in 5th, has pitted. And Carlos Sainz is actually on course to go P1. He's currently 0.2 of a second up on Max Verstappen so far on this lap, as Kevin Magnussen goes up to 7th, improving all the time. Daniel Ricciardo goes 2nd for McLaren, and Vettel goes 7th. So this track really starting to ramp up in terms of grip. And Carlos Sainz, yep, goes P1 by 1/10.5, despite not setting a purple sector at all in any of the sectors. Here comes Charles Leclerc. He is about to go P1 on a 1:29.4. That is by far the quickest lap so far we have seen this weekend. That is 0.6 of a second quicker than his teammate, who is his second. It's Leclerc, P1, Sainz 2nd, Verstappen 3rd. Here comes Verstappen. Improves his lap, but only goes 2nd. About 0.4 of a second down on Leclerc. And Bottas goes 9th. So it's Leclerc from Verstappen, Sainz, and then Ricciardo. And I'll do the rest of the order moment. Just want to see Perez come across the line. And Perez goes 4th. You've got Perez 4th, and then it's Ricciardo 5th. Lance Stroll has gone all the way up to 6th in the Aston Martin. And then you've got Lando Norris in 7th place. Russell 8th. Valtteri Bottas is up to 9th. As I think Russell just did another lap there, but he didn't improve his time, sadly. Bottas, yeah, is up to 9th. And then Vettel is in 10th. So both Aston Martins in the top 10 at the moment. As Alonso is he pushing on a lap? I think he is. There's a replay of Alonso in turn 16 and clips the wall. And they'll want to take a look to see if there's any puncture or anything. It was the lightest of clips, though. I'd be surprised if that resulted in a puncture. Well, it wasn't that light. Okay, maybe it was a bit heavier than I thought, but it was. And that's a replay of Hamilton oversteering like hell into the entry of turn 14 and jumping across the chicane. And Lewis Hamilton is currently in the drop zone with 5 minutes to go. But yeah, Alonso is P11, then Zhou 12th, Schumacher 13th, Magnussen 14th, Tsunoda 15th, and then in the drop zone, Hamilton, Gasly as well. That is a big surprise in 17th, and then Latifi and Albon, which is less of a surprise, of course. Lewis Hamilton, though, is on another lap. He's not improved his first sector, but he's done a personal best middle sector. Now to turn 17, and he gets that pretty much bang on. And no, he's coming into the pits. Probably should have kept on with that lap. Maybe he's not got enough fuel left as he's trying there to overtake Alonso. That's not going to happen into the entry of the pit lane, especially into that entry chicane, as pretty much everyone now is heading into the pits for a quick refueling and some new tyres. So, in the drop zone with 4 minutes to go, Lewis Hamilton, Pierre Gasly, Nicholas Latifi, Alex Albon, and Esteban Ocon. Ocon is out of the session already because he crashed in practice 3 and his chassis has been completely broken by the crashes, or Albon clumping the entry curb, turn 14 a bit too hard. So those are the drivers who need to get out. Hamilton, I believe, has just put on a new set of tyres and gone out again straight away. But Hamilton has got to get out of Q1. He cannot allow the embarrassment of what happened in Saudi, where he got knocked out in, what was it, 17th place. He cannot allow that to happen again, especially with his teammate up in 8th and looking competitive for, say, 5th or 6th. As Alex Albon goes 14th. Given the track evolution, I'm not sure that'll be good enough. He'll probably, unless he does another lap, he's going to struggle, if I'm going to be honest, to get through. Here comes Pierre Gasly. Gasly goes 8th. That is a vital lap. That might just see him get through. So Bottas up to 8th. And Tsunoda has gone all the way up to 5th in the AlphaTauri. So Tsunoda should be, unless something mental happens, he should comfortably get into Q2. Russell is up to 6th. And then you've got Magnussen has gone up and out of the drop zone into 13th. Now Zhou Guan Yu is the driver at risk. So in the drop zone now with 2 minutes to go, Schumacher, Albon, Hamilton, Latifi. Those are, of course, because Ocon is out. Those are the only ones who can get into Q2, can get themselves out of trouble into Q2. It'd be a massive shock if Zhou was to get knocked out. Mick Schumacher produces when it matters most and gets himself up to 8th. That is a vital lap for him. And is, 3.5 tenths quicker than his teammate Magnussen. That's a great effort from Mick. He needs to keep it up. As Lewis Hamilton has done a personal best first sector. As a Haas now gets out of its way, can Hamilton now put in a lap good enough to get him into Q2? As this will probably be his final attempt. And he gets as close to the wall as you dare and gets away with it. And yeah, as long as he doesn't mess up the final turn 17 as the Mercedes starts to porpoise down the straight, as long as he doesn't mess up this final corner, he should be fine, as he's half a second up on Alonso after the first 2 sectors, who is the driver at risk, surprisingly. And here comes Lewis Hamilton to the line, and he goes 5th. That should be good enough for the 7 times world champion. Amazing to say that he should be good enough now to get into Q2, given how used to we are talking about how far will the gap be between him and whoever's second place, with him getting pole position. And oh, that is so bad. Zhou Guan Yu was on a lap, and then it gets blown to pieces because there's cars everywhere at turn 17. It won't affect Alex Albon, though, because he's about to complete his lap. And will he get a slipstream? No, he won't. As he comes to the line now, Albon, can he get out? No, he cannot. Albon is 18th. So that is pretty much the 2 Williamses out. And currently, Alonso and Zhou are in 16th and 17th. I think Zhou might be out because I'm not sure he was able to begin another lap. So that is such a shame for Zhou. That really is such a shame. If he was properly blocked by a certain individual or certain individuals, then he has got to try, and Alfa Romeo got to try and get a penalty for one of those. Alonso, though, 16th, currently out of the session, but he is on a final flying lap, and he's a second up on Magnussen as Lance Stroll goes up to 6th. And as long as Alonso doesn't mess up this corner, turn 17, and he doesn't, he should be able to put Kevin Magnussen out of his misery. And Alonso goes 6th. So that's Magnussen into the drop zone. Let me just quickly update that. Sebastian Vettel goes up to 12th. That's now put Bottas at risk. And Latifi finishes his final lap and is 19th. So yeah, 2 Williams is 18th and 19th. Magnussen has pitted. And I'm pretty sure Zhou Guan Yu was unable to do a final lap because of the amount of cars blocking him. So Q1 is over and done with. And that is your final finishing order on the left-hand side of the screen. So, Charles Leclerc tops Q1. Max Verstappen is 2nd. And then it is Sergio Perez in 3rd place with Carlos Sainz 4th. Hamilton 5th. Alonso 6th. Stroll 7th. Tsunoda 8th. Russell 9th. Ricciardo 10th. And then Schumacher 11th. Vettel 12th. Norris 13th. Gasly 14th. Bottas 15th. And then knocked out in Q1, Kevin Magnussen. That's a surprise. Zhou Guan Yu, that's also a surprise. And then Albon 18th, Latifi 19th, and Esteban Ocon, who never did a lap because he broke his chassis in practice 3. And we'll now prepare ourselves for Q2. And given the shocks there of Magnussen and Zhou going out, which given how Haas and Alfa Romeo have looked on pace, again, it is a surprise. Who knows what's going to happen in Q2? I'll get it all ready. The timer and the cut-off line again. Let me just do that quickly. For anyone new watching who is unsure of how, obviously, qualifying works. So, yeah, that should be. There you go. That's better. So, the highest dotted line you see, which is just in between Daniel Ricciardo and Mick Schumacher on the left-hand side of the screen, anyone in between those two dotted lines at the end of Q2 will be out of the rest of qualifying and will not be able to, of course, compete in Q3, and they will start in those positions. So, for example, if it finished the way it did in Q1, then it'd be Mick Schumacher, Sebastian Vettel, Lando Norris, Pierre Gasly and Valtteri Bottas, which would be quite a surprising 5 to get knocked out, I have to say. Music Monster Man says, feel sorry, or feel bad for Zhou. Yeah, that is such a shame, because he was on a lap, and it looked as though, from the sector times I was seeing, it looked like Zhou was on a lap that would be good enough to get him into the next part of qualifying. And actually, if he got into the next part of qualifying, he would have knocked out his teammate Valtteri Bottas. So, yeah, it's such a shame. Really is a shame that happened, but it happens, doesn't it, in qualifying? How many times do we see it happening where drivers are, trying to prepare for a lap and then they end up blocking others? It's an unfortunate circumstance, but like I said, it's expected. And yeah, Q2 should be getting underway soon. And now we're looking at an F1 replay of what happened with Zhou. And Zhou said on the radio, there were so many cars blocking the last sector. We need to report it's fucking dangerous on my flying lap. That's what he said. So, yeah. Definitely, I think you could see some penalties there coming for some of the drivers. Don't know who the drivers were, though. It looks like there was a Red Bull and a McLaren in there. So, might get interesting in the steward's room. Let me just quickly look at Twitter, because maybe I'll get a better indication on Twitter as to who the cars were that were blocking Zhou Guan Yu. Yeah, Q2 should be underway in a minute or so. And can't see anything at the moment on Twitter in regards to who the certain cars well, but there was definitely a McLaren and a Red Bull in there. I thought I saw as George Lucas is sat in the Mercedes garage. And hold on, yeah, just checking. I've got the right timer ready. Yeah, Q2 should be underway very, very soon as the crowd continues to enjoy the first ever Floridian Grand Prix. Pretty sure this is the first ever F1 race in Florida. Don't think there's been one before. I think the closest one we've had is probably Dallas back in the 1980s. And Q2, I think, has started, but they haven't shown the timer on screen yet, so I'll sync it up in a moment. And nope, the session is about to start. And there you go. Have I got it absolutely synced up perfectly? I think I might have got it absolutely synced up perfectly. Very good reaction time from myself to get that, if I have. But the first car on track is Mick Schumacher. And Mick outqualifies Magnussen. And given the pace of the Haas car, he probably should outqualify him by a few positions. So good job. And let's hope he gets a good result and gets the most out of what is there. Because we need that type of performance from the son of the great man. And yeah, getting a few cars on track now. To be honest, I'd appreciate it if FOM stopped showing the crowd. There is a session going on. And there you go. Maybe they're listening to me. As have I got the timer synced up correctly? I'm about a second off. So I'll sync it up again at 13 minutes. We're not going to get any laps yet. Time lapse, so nothing too much to worry about. But we're currently looking at Charles Leclerc, who is about to start his first lap in Q2. He's just coming onto the straight in between turns 16 and 17. And yeah, we'll be starting his lap soon. Very good time, I have to say, in Q1. Quickest time of the weekend so far, 1:29.4. And has that laid down a marker in the battle for pole position. As Mick Schumacher, I think it's just started his first time running. Yes, he has. We're now looking at him on the screen. And 3, 2, 1. There you go. So 13 minutes to go in Q2. So let's see what Mick Schumacher can do. And looks as though so far on this lap, as he's now just finished the first sector, no real problems. Hitting the apex is exactly how he needs to. And now flies down this straight where the Haas should be pretty quick. Certainly compared to the Mercedes-powered cars. It puts him in good stead. As he, talking of a Mercedes-powered car, he just goes past one that slows down to let him by. Now into turn 14 and 15. And that was a very nice run for Mick through there. And a very nice run as well through turn 16 as he passes a Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton on his quick lap. As Carlos Sainz has done a purple first sector, quicker even than Leclerc, as Mick comes to the end of his lap. And Carlos Sainz has not done a purple middle sector, though. Leclerc has done a purple middle sector as Mick Schumacher goes P1. Of course, he's the first man to set a time. And here comes Charles Leclerc, who will go P1 on a 1:29.7, which is actually slower than he went in Q1. And Carlos Sainz now crosses the line, and he goes into first place. Valtteri Bottas only goes fourth for Alfa Romeo, which is, it's not a bad position, but he is slower actually than Mick Schumacher, which is a surprise, as Russell was on a lap, but is pitted. As Max Verstappen now goes P1, he's just completed his lap, and he sets the quickest time of the weekend so far, 1:29. Sorry, a 1:29.2 for Max Verstappen. And Sergio Perez has gone second, 0.4 of a second down on Verstappen. But we know Leclerc can go quicker because Leclerc did a 29.4 in Q1. So Leclerc can definitely still improve. As we're currently looking at Lando Norris coming into turn 17. And Norris now through the final two flat-out corners. What can he do compared to, say, Schumacher and Bottas? He goes ahead of them on a 1:30.2, which is a decent time for Norris, but it's not as good as Lewis Hamilton, who goes fifth. Hamilton only a few hundredths of a second slower than the two Ferrari cars, which is interesting, as Daniel Ricciardo is always missed the apex quite badly as Ricciardo and got a big oversteer on the exit of turn 17, and Ricciardo now comes to the line and only goes 9th. And yeah, I think that final turn 17 was the problem with that time. And yeah, half a second slower than Bottas, Ricciardo, that time. So currently it's Verstappen, Perez, Sainz, Leclerc, Hamilton, Norris, Schumacher, Bottas, Ricciardo. And then we've got Alonso, Stroll, Tsunoda, Russell, Vettel, Gasly yet to set a time. The two AlphaTauris, though, of Tsunoda and Gasly are about to complete their laps. Here comes Yuki Tsunoda through the final corner. And Tsunoda goes 6th, which is a good lap for him ahead of Lando Norris. And Pierre Gasly now goes 6th. So that's 6th and 7th for the two AlphaTauri cars. And that pushes Ricciardo into the drop zone. And Ricciardo, the first man in the drop zone who has actually done a lap time. Here is Lance Stroll, who's had a decent weekend. And Stroll goes 9th. Good time. Aston Martin not looking too bad after all. So Stroll up to 9th. And here is now Sebastian Vettel, 4 times world champion. What can he do in this Aston Martin car that embarrassed him in Melbourne? But it's definitely in a lot better shape than it was a month ago, as Vettel rounds the final corner and goes 12th. That is disappointing considering where his teammate is. And Alonso does his first time and he goes 7th. That's bang on where he needs to be. And now Bottas improves his time and goes 7th. So he's starting to show a bit more speed than we saw in Q1. So in the drop zone with 7.5 minutes to go, Stroll, Mick Schumacher, Sebastian Vettel, Daniel Ricciardo and George Russell. Russell hasn't done a time yet. He's just, though, finished his outlap and he's now beginning first flying lap. Given that he's been quicker than Hamilton this weekend, and looked quicker, given that Hamilton's only just behind the two Ferraris, you'd honestly expect Russell probably to be right there, if not ahead of Hamilton and the two Ferraris as well. As Russell, big moment there through turn, turn 5 or turn 4, and he's now backed off. That was a massive moment. That could have ended up in a big spin and right into the wall. Good car control, though, to keep it all together. And he'll have to now wind up for another flying lap. But that could have been very bad. Is a replay. And yeah, the rear end just didn't have the grip when he most needed it. And Toto Wolff kind of banging his desk at that, as Charles Leclerc is on a new improved lap in 4th place. He's done 2 personal best sectors. Can it be a personal best final sector, and can it get him closer to Max Verstappen? Comes to the line and goes P1 by 0.07 of a second. So a good response there by Charles Leclerc. Of course, so we'll see what Verstappen can do in response when he comes out of the pits on fresh tyres. But yeah, 5.5 minutes to go. Stroll, Schumacher, Vettel, Ricciardo, Russell in the drop zone. And really, the drivers you need to be looking at that are under threat, I think, are probably Hamilton, Gasly, Bottas, Alonso, Tsunoda, Norris. I think the top 4, as long as they do another time, they should be able to get through with one more improvement of lap time. The rest, though, I'll have to see. Even if they improve their lap time, still might not be good enough. As is replay Tsunoda, who says, I touched the wall a little bit, and you're damn right you did. Was pretty much the same impact that Alonso had with the wall, which is not too bad. As here's Russell on another lap, and he's slightly up on what Lando Norris has done for the first sector. Of course, this is Russell's first lap of Q2. And let's see how he gets on in this tricky end of the middle sector. Turn 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And we'll see what his middle sector time looks like. Gets through the chicane okay enough. Now through turn 16. And yeah, looks okay. But he is 0.05 of a second off of Norris so far on this lap. So Russell, at the moment, not doing well enough to get into the top 10. Maybe he's lost a bit of confidence in the car after that moment. As Russell comes through the final corner. Let's see if Russell will get into the top 10. Comes to the line. And he does. What a final sector he had. Gained about a 10th and a half. Not a 10th and a half, but almost a 10th and a half in that final sector. And goes up to 7th place. So in the drop zone with 3.5 minutes left. Norris, Stroll, Schumacher, Vettel, Ricciardo. It would certainly be a surprise if McLaren were to fall victim with both cars here. But we've seen it before this season as Schumacher brakes hard now for turn 17. And exits well enough. Can he get into the top 10? Comes to the line. And no, I don't even think he improved his lap time. He did a 1:30.6 that time, so no, he didn't improve his time. It's probably 10th and a half, 0.2 of a second slower than his personal best. Here's Lewis Hamilton on an improved time. He's done a personal best first sector, missed the apex of turn 11. Not by much, but enough to lose time. Now into turn 14 and 15. And gets to the chicane nicely enough. And into turn 16 as well. And has not done a personal best middle sector, so he'll probably not improve with this lap. And yeah, I think lost probably a 10th or so. Missing the apex slightly of turn 11. Down to turn 17. And yeah, that's not a great run, is it, through turn 17? I'd be surprised if he improves on this time. Let's see, he comes to the line. And no, he's 0.2 of a second slower than his personal best. So 2 minutes to go. Does Hamilton go for another lap? Or does he continue on with, what he has done? I mean, he's only a few hundredths of a second slower than Carlos Sainz, who's out on track, and he will have to, Carlos, set another lap just in case. But will Hamilton have to go for another lap? I'm not sure he will. I think he has enough pace in hand, but we'll see. Sebastian Vettel starts his final lap of Q2. And we'll see what Vettel can do here as he comes into now turn 1. Aston Martin certainly handling better than it was previously. And he's in a more competitive position than Aston Martin found themselves in earlier in the season, as it porpoises quite a bit through these fast corners. Now into turn 8. Car looks fine so far. No real issues. Slight twitchiness on the exit. And for the first sector, he's a 10th.5 down on Tsunoda, who is the driver at risk. And the driver, he needs to go faster than to get into the top 10. As the only man on an outlap is, Ricciardo. Who, of course, in 15th, desperately needs to improve. Also, Lance Stroll, who is ahead of Vettel at the moment, has done a personal best first sector. So Aston Martin doing the best they can so far. Oh, so close to the wall. Cut it very, very fine. But he's still a 10th of a second down to Tsunoda. No matter how close he's getting to those walls, it's not enough. As he now comes down to turn 17. Stroll at the moment is 200ths of a second inside of the time he needs to get into the top 10. As Vettel now, very nice exit out of turn 17. Is it good enough? Comes to the line, and he is good enough. It goes up to 8th place. Vettel up to 8th. Lance Stroll now comes to the line. And Stroll, 6th in the Aston Martin. What a fantastic lap by Stroll. And Bottas now goes 5th for Alfa Romeo. Mick Schumacher out in 14th. That is disappointing, but at least out-qualified his teammate. And disappointing, I have to say, for Haas. Lando Norris goes 3rd. That's a great time by Lando. Yuki Tsunoda goes 9th. That pushes Russell into the drop zone. Alonso can only go 11th. Alonso's out. This didn't have the pace in the end. Russell's pitted, so Russell is out. Russell is out in 12th place. It's not all done yet, because the only man who can put himself in the top 10 is Daniel Ricciardo, and he's just about in the sector times at the moment, doing enough to get into the top 10. It's going to be so close to hit between him and Gasly. Let's see how he does in turn 17, Ricciardo. And it's okay. Nothing spectacular. As he comes now to the line. Daniel Ricciardo, only 14th. That is a disappointing end to Ricciardo's qualifying session. Where did all the time go? It must have been on the straight. Obviously, the AlphaTauri is quicker in a straight line than the McLaren. Maybe that's what it was. Ricciardo 14th. So, your final finishing order in Q2 is Charles Leclerc. These are the drivers that are going into the shootout of Q3. Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, Sergio Perez, Carlos Sainz, Valtteri Bottas, Lewis Hamilton, Lance Stroll. What a drive by Lance Stroll. Tsunoda 9th, Gasly 10th. So that's what, the 2 AlphaTauris, 2 Red Bulls, 2 Ferraris, a McLaren, an Alfa Romeo, and a Mercedes, and an Aston Martin as well. Knocked out of Q2, Fernando Alonso, George Russell. What a surprise that is, given the pace he showed yesterday. Sebastian Vettel 13th, Daniel Ricciardo 14th, and 15th is Mick Schumacher. And in about 5 minutes' time, it'll be time for the main event of the day, which of course is Q3, which is a 12-minute long session. And for anyone who's new to Formula 1, simply, it's a 12-minute session, and whoever ends up quickest at the end of the session will be on pole position. And obviously, however the top 10 ends up at the end of the 12-minute session is how the top 10 will be for the grid. As now from 11th to 20th, the grid is decided. Lots of surprises. Again, Russell, Alonso, Magnussen, Zhou, obviously Ocon. Yeah, very surprising qualifying session so far. Who thought Stroll and Tsunoda would get in the top 10? That is one hell of a surprise. And I have to say, great job by Lance. And also, people saying in chat, and it is true, great job also by Lando Norris to get up in 3rd place. If he was to get that in Q3, then his smile would be incredibly big. Bigger than anything you see from Daniel Ricciardo. And just looking in the chat, people saying Ricciardo is gone from McLaren. Daniel lol, thank God Gasly 10th. Yeah, I don't know if he missed the apex of turn 17, but to me, it feels like maybe he in the final sector he lost the time because simply the McLaren is slower than the AlphaTauri in a straight line. But given Norris is up in third in Q2, Ricciardo should be in the top 10. There's no excuse for Daniel Ricciardo to be 14th on the grid. No excuse whatsoever. And if Ricciardo continues this form, I don't see how he can continue at McLaren. I just don't see how that is possible. And I feel very sorry for Niblo. Of course, it's my co-commentator for Race Watchalongs. Not for every Race Watchalong, but when he can make it, he is my co-commentator. I feel very sorry for him, as I'm just looking at his Twitter saying, and now Ricciardo out in Q2, yeah, I'm done. And I'm going to guess that Liverpool, his team, have messed up, and they have 1-1 draw for Liverpool, so he'll be incredibly pissed off. Could be worse, though. You could be a Man United fan. But yeah, Q3 will be underway in 2 or 3 minutes from now. And it looks like that I might be wrong. It looks like Charles Leclerc might be the man for pole. Unless Verstappen is saving it all up for that final lap in Q3. Yeah, Leclerc looks as though he might have the pace here. He's looked very good, and his lap times have been very, very good in qualifying so far, setting the pace in both Q1 and Q2. As on Sky F1, they're just showing a replay of what do you call it? How Russell missed Q3, and it does look like there was a bit of rear end stability on his lap. And I think because of that, Russell probably lost a bit of confidence in the car. Because I don't think it was doing that yesterday when, of course, he was up in P1. The car seemed to be a lot more stable. So, yeah. Shame for him. And now they're just showing Sebastian Vettel at the chicane. And Vettel, not a great run, I have to say, on the exit of the second part of the 14-15 chicane. Wouldn't have cost him that much time, though. Probably, 200-300ths of a second. But that would have probably got him a couple extra positions. So, shows you how close things are in Formula 1. And in that midfield pack, I mean, having a good midfield car, it does help, obviously. But with it being so close between all of the cars, it does, at the end of the day, in qualifying, come down to the drivers. So, I don't really feel that sorry for certain drivers who get knocked out in Q1 and Q2, because like I said, with things as close as they are, it does come down to the drivers nailing a lap. And obviously, the top 10 deserve to be in the top 10 for Q3, and they all have nailed their laps so far. Yeah, Q3 should be underway in a minute or so. KG saying, I'm sitting in the front row and I'm hammered drunk. Hopefully you're enjoying it. As Q3 should be underway in 30 seconds to a minute from now. Not seeing any cars as turn 11 to 16 incident involving Carlos Sainz reviewed. No further investigation for impeding. I guess that's to do with Zhou Guan Yu. That would be my guess. Anyway, the session has started. I'll sync the timer up in 30 seconds time. So, yeah, I'll sync it up at 11 minutes. Is everyone now coming out onto the track as the McLaren exited just before one of the Red Bulls there. And they all pile out onto track. And yeah, 3, 2, 1. And there you go. 11 minutes to go in qualifying. And who will get pole? They're just showing on screen the previous pole positions in the United States. Lewis Hamilton has dominated those stat sheets when it comes to poles in this country, really since 2007. The last pole position in the United States of America was Max Verstappen. A brilliant lap he did at the Circuit of America. But this track is completely different. See whether he does have more in the tank or whether Charles Leclerc simply has just too much speed in that Ferrari car. As talking of Leclerc, we're currently watching him coming round on his outlap. And we'll see what his first lap time will be of Q3. What was the best time he did in Q2? Was it? I think it was a 29.2, wasn't it? That Charles Leclerc did. So that's what you got to think of in terms of Leclerc and the lap times he's doing, whether it's good enough or not. I think Verstappen did what, a 29.4, something like that. But yeah, we'll keep an eye on what Leclerc does. And here he is. Charles Leclerc begins his first attempt at pole position in Miami. Good first corner. Flies now into these long, fast corners. And now Leclerc porpoises through and 4, 5 and into 6 and 7. And that Ferrari car looking very nice. And now exits turn 8. And his first sector is a 29.5. We'll see what Carlos Sainz, his teammate, does for the first sector. 29.4. Then again, Carlos has been quicker in the first sector. So we'll see what Carlos can do in the middle sector. As Leclerc into turn 11, hits the apex, bang on the money. Car looks very nice, I have to say, very nicely balanced. Into now the turn 14, 15 chicane. What a run he had through that chicane. That was the best run you could possibly get. And Leclerc didn't quite get as close to the wall as he could, but don't think he necessarily has to at this current moment. And Carlos Sainz has done pretty much an equal time for the middle sector. So Sainz is very close to Leclerc on pace. Verstappen, by the way, has not done a purple first sector. As Leclerc rounds the final corner, as Verstappen now coming through the turn 14, 15 chicane. Leclerc does a 1:29.0, the new quickest lap of the weekend so far. Here comes Carlos Sainz, second. Only a few hundredths of a second slower. So Sainz is right on the pace, but so is the current world champion, Max Verstappen, who has done a purple middle sector. And let's see what he does now as he comes through the final 2 corners. And Max Verstappen goes onto pole position, a 1:28.9, the new quickest time of the weekend. And Max, for the moment, has provisional pole position. Sergio Perez goes 4th on a 1:29.4. Perez, half a second away, really, from the pace of the top 3 there. Bottas is 5th. Hamilton can only go 6th. The Bottas best of the rest so far. And then you've got Norris in P7. Let's see what Gasly does. Gasly goes 10th, slower than Tsunoda. It's Norris 7th, Tsunoda 8th, Stroll 9th, and Gasly 10th. So, with 7 minutes, or just under 7 minutes to go until the end of qualifying, Max Verstappen is on provisional pole position. Charles Leclerc is 0.064 of a second off of Max Verstappen's time. And then Sainz is 3rd. Sainz is 0.080 of a second off of Max's time. So we've got a 3-way fight for pole. Perez is 4th. Can Perez improve? I'm not sure. We'll have to see in the final lap that comes in about 5 minutes from now. And then Bottas 5th. What a job that is. Hamilton 6th. Norris 7th. Tsunoda 8th. Stroll 9th. And Gasly 10th. it would be incredible if Bottas was to get 5th in the Alfa Romeo. Who would have thought he'd be 5th with 1 run to go in qualifying in Miami in 2022 in the Alfa Romeo and ahead of both Mercedes at the moment? It would be fantastic for him. But for Lewis Hamilton, it's not fantastic whatsoever. He's currently in 6th place and he's almost 1.2 seconds off the pace of pole position. That is anything but progression. That is regression from what we saw at Imola. So, unless Lewis Hamilton pulls out an amazing lap, which we know he can do, but I'm not sure in this car he can, then I think you'd have to say Mercedes have not made that step forward that we thought they have. That was all just fake, phony baloney. Mercedes still a second lap off the pace of the front runners, as the Red Bulls and Ferraris now get back into the pits and now will be refueled and I guess you could say retired with fresh tyres. And Sergio Perez now, I think, looking at a data sheet to see where he's losing the time. Probably thinking, wow, that was a great lap. How come I have second off? I'm not sure if he's made a mistake, though. We haven't seen anything to suggest that Sergio Perez made a mistake or anything. So, I don't know. I can't say at the moment. I hope he can go a lot quicker than that, because his pace has been better than that so far this weekend. As this man on screen on the TV broadcast, Lance Stroll, who is 9th at the moment. What a result that would be. Obviously, great drive for him in Imola to finish 10th. And yeah, if he was to get 9th, that would be a superb job. And Aston Martin definitely making strides since the start of the season, where their car was pretty awful, I have to say. Let me just quickly adjust that picture. Got a better position. There you go. That's better. Yep, 3.5 minutes to go in Q3, and we should be getting the cars on track for their final laps in the next 30 seconds or so. There's a lot of people enjoying the swimming pools, not even paying attention to the session because they couldn't give a fuck. As Perez does have some fans at the track. I did say in my preview that it would be kind of a home Grand Prix for him because of how close it is to home. Of course, he lives in Mexico. And Miami is, compared to other races on the calendar, not too far away from his home. Here we go. So Lance Stroll is the first man to venture out a hot Floridian circuit. And the second car on track. And actually the next two cars on track are the two Ferraris. And then Perez. No, Perez is not on track yet. Bottas and Hamilton and Norris for the next couple. And then it should be the two AlphaTauris and two Red Bulls. The two after that. As we are looking at a Ferrari. I don't know which one it is. I'm going to assume that it's Charles Leclerc. And it is, I'm pretty sure, Charles Leclerc, who's on his outlap. We saw plenty of times in 2021 in Max Verstappen's title campaign how a lot of those pole positions he got, going up against, of course, very stiff competition against Lewis Hamilton, the best driver of all time, against probably the best team of all time. We saw how stiff the competition was, and we saw how important it was at many times last season in the championship scrap to get pole position in a certain, few races. So even though it's only race 5, trust me, it's important. Every pole position that you can get is very, very important. And Charles Leclerc will be giving everything on this lap to get pole. Despite his 27-point lead, he knows he cannot afford to let Max start to claw back in to his lead and allow Max to build confidence, because a confident Max is a very, very, very hard one to stop. as Charles Leclerc rounds turn 17 and begins his final attempt at pole position. Can Ferrari get pole for the first time since Melbourne almost a month ago? Leclerc into turn 1. Does that corner absolutely well. Turn 2 and 3 look fine. And now into turn 4 and 5. Very tricky corners to hang on to the car. All the car moving around slightly on the rear end. And Leclerc through turn 6, 7 and 8 looks very, very good. And he's done a very good first sector. A tenth of a second up and a purple first sector. Carlos Sainz has done an even better first sector. His first sector is a tenth and a half quicker than Leclerc's. And quarter of a second quicker than Verstappen. So Carlos Sainz is on a roll. And Leclerc now into turn 14 and 15. Again, brilliant run through the chicane as the session is now over. But the final laps still yet to be completed. Leclerc, quarter of a second up on Verstappen after the first 2 sectors. We'll see what Sainz does. Sainz has lost a bit of time in the middle sector, but he's still 2 tenths up on Max. And Max, what's happened? Max has had some kind of issue. He's slowing down. The Max, I'm not sure if he crossed the line in time. Stroll finishes up in 9th. Charles Leclerc comes to the line. And Charles Leclerc gets pole position, or does he? Because here comes Carlos Sainz, and Sainz finishes in 2nd. So Ferrari have got the front row. Hamilton up to 5th. Bottas goes 4th ahead of Perez. What a lap by Valtteri Bottas. And we're now looking at... Who are we looking at here? Is this Perez or is this Verstappen? It's Verstappen, but he's not on a lap, I don't believe. As Perez is 4th. Goes back up to 4th. Pierre Gasly goes 7th. That is a great lap for Gasly. And yet Verstappen slowing down. Don't know what happened. He must have not been... He must have not got out in time. Been released from the pit lane early enough to get back out. So, Q3 is over, guys. And we have a final finishing order for you. So, it is a Ferrari 1-2 in qualifying. That's the first Ferrari 1-2 in qualifying since 2019. I believe since the 2019 Mexican or Japanese Grand Prix. One of the two. So, Charles Leclerc on pole for the 3rd time this season. Carlos Sainz 2nd. Sainz, though, should not be that disappointed. He did very well in qualifying. Max Verstappen 3rd. Here's a replay of Verstappen. And, yeah, through turn 4 and 5, made a mistake and then had to abort his lap because he bottled it, basically. So Verstappen, when it mattered most, didn't get it right, and he will start 3rd, and he faces one hell of a fight to finish in 1st place tomorrow, of course. He can definitely still do it, but it's going to be very, very tough. Yeah, Ferrari 1-2, Leclerc on pole, Sainz 2nd, Verstappen 3rd, Perez 4th, Valtteri Bottas 5th, Hamilton 6th, Gasly 7th, Norris 8th, Tsunoda 9th, and Stroll 10th, and then Alonso 11th, Russell 12th, Vettel 13th, Ricciardo 14th, Schumacher 15th, Magnussen 16th, Zhou 17th, and then Albon 18th, Latifi 19th, and Ocon 20th. That is your starting grid for tomorrow's 2022 Miami Grand Prix. And wow, no one expected that. Given that Max put in such a good first attempt in qualifying, nobody expected that. Yet, when it mattered, Max, for the first time in a while, yeah, bottled it. Just made a critical error when the two Ferraris and the two Ferrari drivers got it bang on the money with their laps. Anyway, I think I'm going to bring this stream to an end. Of course, I've done many streams today, and obviously got to prepare for tomorrow, race day in Miami. Thank you guys for coming along to all the streams today, and thank you for coming along to this stream, the qualifying watch along. Don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, by the way, if you are new to the channel, bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there. I will be live 3 times tomorrow. First, race preview, 5:30 p.m. UK time. Secondly, race watch along, 8 p.m. UK time. And then as soon as possible, after the race is finished, I'll be live again for a race reaction stream. So make sure to come along to all of that. Don't forget to smash the like button and share this video and channel everywhere you can. Does help, of course, the channel grow. And as well, follow me on Twitter at ChazHD5. And don't forget to join my Discord server, link below in the description. But guys, until my race preview tomorrow and race day for Miami, it has been me, ChazHD. Goodbye.